Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 22. Hehheh. It's raining cat and dogs, isn't it? Izuku was reeling. He was sitting in his stairwell going over the last few hours. He met Eraserhead, had a crisis, jumped off a roof, got pretty solid proof that one of his favorite heroes and biggest inspirations wasn't, in fact, a dickhead. He finally took down that shitty rhino man that had started this whole vigilante thing, and then he ditched Eraserhead to clean up the mess. That, honestly, could have gone worse, but it was still a lot, and he was exhausted. He took the time to change out of his vigilante gear and splashed some water on his face and pat it dry before finally curling up into his nest for the night. He plugged in his phone and turned off the light, and he was just about to give in to the clutches of sleep when he heard a crash and a splash. What the frick? Tsukauchi had some explaining to do. Did Ivy just text him? Ivy already knew who Tsukauchi was and had worked out that it was him who sent Shota here to begin with, and none of that did Tsukauchi deem important enough to inform Shota of. A bit miffed, he took out his phone after asking the woman to wait at the front of the alleyway, informing her that the police were on their way. She'd either stick around for that or she wouldn't. He called Tsukauchi, who picked up on the first ring, and Shota could hear sirens on his end. Good. ETA, he said flatly. Ah, so you've met Ivy. I was just about to call you. I'm 3 minutes out. Why the hell are you on texting terms with a potentially prepubescent vigilante? He accused. Okay, prepubescent is a bit of a stretch. Right? The detective said, sounding suddenly unsure of himself. They're certainly small enough to be, but I don't know. They seem quite skilled, he responded. He hadn't gotten to see them fight. He'd only heard it, but Ivy would have to know what they were doing in order to take out a man thrice their size, not to mention the ease with which they disassembled the firearm. It didn't seem feasible that a child was capable of that, but they did seem young. Younger than Shota at the very least. I expect you'll explain yourself when you arrive, Shota said before hanging up. You're paying for their phone plan? Was his first question after Tsukauchi explained his whole involvement in the case from beginning to present. Yeah, it's like 5,000 yen a month. I might not have 2 full-time jobs, but I am a detective. I can swing it, he defended. You're a shitty sugar daddy to a possibly homeless vigilante is what you are, Shota muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Tsukauchi to hear. Wait. Possibly homeless? The detective went from offended to concerned in rapid succession. They knew very specifically how to help a homeless woman. As I said, it's just a hunch. Possibly homeless. That's pretty much all the information I have that you don't. Now let's get these guys in the car before I decide not to help you, he said, effectively ending the conversation. There was a loud crash that sounded like something falling from the ceiling into the sublevel, and Izuku really did not want to go check it out. Come on, Izuku, you're a vigilante. You go out kicking criminals' asses every night. It's probably just a piece of the roof anyway. Come on. Izuku was in the middle of psyching himself up when a horrible yowl sounded out along with the sound of scratching at the lower door of the stairwell. What was that? Well, An animal, clearly. It was an animal. But how the hell did they end up there? Did they fall all the way from the roof? Oh, Gummy, it's DJ! The realization had him sprinting down the stairs and wrenching the door open, and sure enough, a DJ-sized blob of mud was standing at the door, glaring up at him as if it was his fault. She promptly invited herself in and started making her way up the stairs. Oh, hell no, DJ, you are not tracking that shit into my nest, Izuku said as he went to scoop her up before she could get any further. It went about as well as he'd expected it to. She immediately writhed around and started scratching at him. Little shit. Restraining the murder mittens as much as he could, he went and grabbed a towel from his laundry pile and swaddled her up. If looks could kill, Izuku would be a dead man. She seemed completely uninjured, and given that she regularly jumps off the roof and her fall was clearly broken by water, he wasn't too surprised. Finally getting over his fear turned concern, he couldn't help but laugh. DJ was a very fluffy and light-haired cat, and she looked ridiculous with her fur all weighted down by muddy water, swaddled up in a towel and glaring at him. Kami. He was going to have to clean her off, wasn't he? With that realization, the situation wasn't as funny. It was early April, and it was still too cold at night to let her back outside to dry. And who knows what is in the elevator shaft turned sinkhole, turned nasty pond. DJ could get sick if she tried to groom all that mud out of her coat herself. Crap. Luckily, Izuku had a pot of rainwater he regularly collected to rinse his face or hands pretty often. It wasn't potable given the pollutants of the city, but it worked fine to rinse off and clean things with. DJ, you're not gonna like this, but I promise you it's for your own good. Famous last words. Izuku stood, rearranging things around so that DJ wouldn't splash them while he held her under one arm, and she valiantly fought to crane herself around into a position where she could bite him. He pushed his nest over to the far back corner and set the pot up in the far front corner, hoping that would be far enough. Once everything was cleared out of the way, he gently unwrapped DJ, who immediately started swatting at him. Doing his best to ignore or dodge the swipes, he dunked her bottom half into the pot, holding her upright with one hand by the scruff. Her back legs were supporting most of her weight, so he figured it would be okay. As fast as he could, he cupped the water in his other hand and dumped it over the parts of her that didn't fit in the oversized pot. By the end of it, he couldn't say she was clean, but she was a stray. She probably couldn't have been considered clean a day in her life. She'd largely returned to her normal color, so Izuku called that good enough, and fished a cleaner towel out of his nest and dried her off as best he could. Once he was done, he finally let her go, and she stepped just out of arm's length, sat down, and glared at him. Kami, she's never going to let him pet her again. Sheepishly, Izuku took the second towel and started soaking up the mess DJ's thrashing had made of the floor, but it was absorbent concrete, so he really couldn't do much but let it dry on its own. Sighing, he flipped on the space heater to expedite the process. Izuku turned to rearrange his nest back into a sleepable configuration and grabbed some treats for DJ to hopefully regain some of the brownie points he had just lost with her. When he turned back, DJ was curled into a little ball right in front of the space heater. Kami, she was so freaking cute. He grabbed the phone he hardly ever used anymore and took a picture of her bathing in the warm light coming from the lamp and heater. It felt good to have her here. It felt right. It felt like home. All at once, Izuku realized that this stupid cat was the only living creature he had ever bared his soul to and stayed. Sure, it was just because she didn't understand a word he said, but she came to him for help, and she was here now, and she was warm and safe with him. Oh, Kami, he was crying. This is so stupid. Of course she came here. It's the stairs. Where the heck else is she supposed to go to get back up? With a sniffle, he wiped his eyes and tossed a treat that landed right next to her head, but she didn't eat it. She's probably still mad at him, and he couldn't really blame her. He went to turn the light off, and as he reached out, he saw the state of his arms. It looked like he got into a fight with an entire forest's worth of paper. Damn, DJ, you beat me up more than Patrol does, he said with a teary, humorless laugh. He needed to disinfect those at the very least. He definitely didn't have enough Band-Aids to cover all of the scratches, but disinfecting them and putting on a clean long-sleeve shirt should be enough. His immune system had grown quite fortified in his months on the street, and the cuts weren't that deep anyway. With a sigh, he pulled out a new shirt and the bottle of rubbing alcohol. This was gonna hurt like a bitch. It did, in fact, hurt like a bitch. When all that was done, he crawled back into his nest with aching arms and finally fell asleep. Izuku was woken up by the standard screeching of his alarm going off. Izuku wouldn't go so far as to call himself a morning person, but he didn't usually have a problem getting up early. But today, he was just so cozy. Getting up was the last thing he wanted to do. He was about to roll over and cover his ears for just a few more minutes when he was jolted awake by movement against his shoulder and a swift bap to the face. DJ had been curled up in the crook of his neck and shoulder, purring, and she did not look any happier to have been woken up than Izuku was. That explains why he was so cozy. Kami, she was so cute and all dry and fluffy again. She was cuddling up to him while they slept. Oh, Kami, she's so cute and perfect, and she doesn't hate him, and she bapped his face again. And she really wants him to turn off that alarm. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Izuku leaned over her, silenced the alarm, and laid back down. DJ had closed her eyes again, but kept her head upright. She was dozing. So cute! Cautiously, he reached out a hand to gently pet the top of her head. She allowed it for a moment before she lazily opened her eyes and bapped his hand away. Okay, cuddles yes, petting no. Message received. Getting up and walking away from this felt like a criminal offense, but this morning was the last chance to get a shower in before the weekend. DJ didn't seem to mind the stench he was accumulating, but he sure did. Nuzzling his cheek into DJ's side, he snapped another picture, this time of the two of them, and stayed there as long as he possibly could before he knew he wouldn't have time to fit in a shower before class. He dragged himself out of bed, put his uniform on, and left the door cracked open so DJ could make her way out if she wanted to. Maybe he could add a cat door to the top of the staircase? End of recording.